Probably aware of the recent cave diving tragedy in the Maldives. 5 Italian divers on what should have been a pretty ordinary recreational diving liveaboard boat all made a dive to a cave well below recreational limits. The entrance to this cave is at 180 feet, 55 meters, and all 5 of them perished on the dive.
The ocean above them looked perfect. That's the part that stays with you. While 5 people were dying inside a submerged cave 60 meters below the surface of the Indian Ocean, the water above them was clear, warm, and completely still. The kind of still that ends up in travel photographs. The kind of still that sells holidays. On the boat, people waited. They checked the time. They looked out at that perfect water and saw nothing, because there was nothing to see. The cave had already taken them. It just hadn't told anyone yet. Here's the detail investigators cannot explain. All 4 of the remaining victims were found together in the deepest chamber, not scattered, not near the exit, together. Which means at some point, deep inside that cave in the dark, past the point where natural light reaches, they made a decision, and we still don't know what it was. The Maldives sells a very specific image of itself: turquoise water, white sand, overwater bungalows with glass floors. It is one of the most photographed places on Earth, and for good reason. From the surface, it is genuinely extraordinary. But the Maldives that divers know is a different place entirely. Below the surface, the archipelago is shaped by channels, called candos, breaks in the reef where open ocean meets the interior of the atolls. These channels are where the serious diving happens, because they funnel current, and current brings life. Sharks raise schools of fish dense enough to block out the light. The candos are what make the Maldives one of the premier dive destinations in the world. They are also why things can go wrong so fast. Near Alamatha Island in the Vavu Atoll, there was a site that went by several names in different reports. Dakanu Kandu, Dehavana Kandu, Shark Cave. Whatever name you choose, the geography was not in dispute. An underwater cave system. Entrance at approximately 50 meters, 164 feet below the surface. Multiple chambers extending deeper. The third and deepest segment pushing past 60 meters, nearly 200 feet down, where natural light no longer reaches and where the walls close in around you. The Maldives has a recreational diving limit of 30 meters. This cave began where that limit ended. Monica was an ecology professor at the University of Geneva. Her work focused on marine life and underwater ecosystems. This was not a hobby for her. It was her career, her expertise, the thing she had given her professional life to. With her was her daughter Georgia, 23 years old. Then Muriel, another researcher. Federico, who had studied marine biology. And Gianluca, the diving instructor for the group. They were aboard the Duke of York, a liveaboard vessel. The kind of boat serious divers use when they want to spend multiple days moving between sites without returning to shore. There were approximately 20 other Italians on board. Some were connected to marine research at the University of Genova. Permits had been arranged for soft coral survey work. The university would later make a careful distinction. The fatal dive itself was not part of the official research activity. That distinction became significant almost immediately. Here is what we know about the 5 people who entered that cave. They were not beginners. They were not tourists who misread a sign. Between them, they had years of ocean experience, academic knowledge of marine environments, and at least one certified dive instructor leading the group. And none of that was enough. Which means the question is not why untrained people took a risk they didn't understand. The question is why experienced people who understood the water professionally, entered a cave system that required training, equipment, and gas planning that recreational divers simply do not have. That question does not yet have a confirmed answer. That morning on the Duke of York would have looked ordinary to anyone watching. Gear checks, tanks being prepared, the particular choreography of a dive group getting ready. Regulators tested, buoyancy devices inflated and deflated, wetsuits pulled on in the early heat. The kind of routine that experienced divers move through without thinking. The people who stayed on the boat would have watched them go in, seen the bubbles, seen the water close over them, then nothing, because the ocean shows you nothing once a diver goes under. Cave diving expert John Volanthen, one of the divers who helped rescue the Thai boys trapped in Tham Luang Cave in 2018, has spoken about cases like this in general terms. Depth generally equals danger, and being deep inside a cave adds to that danger significantly. At 50 meters, the physics become unforgiving in ways that feel abstract until they aren't. The pressure at that depth is 6 times what it is at the surface. Every breath a diver takes pulls 6 times the amount of gas from the tank. A cylinder that would last an hour in shallow water might last 10 minutes at depth. Less, if the diver is finning hard against current, stressed, or trying to solve a problem. The Maldives is built on current. A dive that begins in still water can become physically demanding within minutes of descent. And then there is the cave itself. Some descriptions of the system mention restrictions. Passages where the cave narrows, where a diver has to angle their body and their equipment carefully to get through. At 60 meters inside an enclosed space, a restriction is not an obstacle. It is a potential execution. Equipment can snag, a tank can wedge. Panic, which breathing compressed gas at extreme depth can chemically accelerate, can make it impossible to move carefully enough to get free. But the deepest danger of cave diving is the one that sounds almost simple. The exit is not above you. In open water, every diver's emergency plan is the same. Something goes wrong. You go up. The surface is always directly overhead. In a cave, going up puts you into rock. The exit is behind you, through the same passages you came in the same sequence, in reverse. If visibility drops, if current shifts, if a diver becomes disoriented in the dark, the exit doesn't move toward you. You have to find it. The boat crew had a loose timeline. They knew when the group went in. They knew, roughly, when they should have come back up. The first sign that something was wrong was not a sound, not a distress signal, not a diver surfacing in distress. It was just time. Time passing past the point where it should have stopped passing. And then one body surfaced. It was Gianluca, the dive instructor. If the instructor is the first one out, and he did not make it, the question of what happened to the other 4 stopped being theoretical. When Gianluca was recovered, the shape of the emergency changed completely. This was no longer a search. The people on the boat, the other Italian passengers, the crew, anyone who had watched that group enter the water, were now inside a different kind of waiting. The Maldivian authorities were notified. Italian officials were contacted. The university connection brought institutional weight to what was already a disaster. The remaining 4, Monica, Georgia, Muriel, Federico, were still inside the cave. In missing diver emergencies, there is always a brief period where rescue and recovery exist simultaneously in the mind. Maybe there is an air pocket. Maybe the group found a chamber. Maybe there is something no one understands yet. That window closes, and when it closes completely. Maldivian dive teams began attempting to reach the interior of the system. Every attempt carried its own risk calculation. How deep? How far? How much gas to reserve for the exit? A recovery diver in a cave at 60 meters is not just looking for victims. They are managing their own survival at the same time. The cave system had 3 segments, based on the descriptions that emerged in subsequent reporting. The first chamber, where natural light still reaches. The second, darker. The third, the deepest, where the light does not go, and where the passages reportedly narrow. The teams found no one in the first 2 chambers. Mohammed Mahdi was a member of the Maldives National Defense Force. He went into that cave as part of the recovery operation, trained, prepared, there to bring people out. He did not come back out alive. He suffered decompression sickness during the search and died. The cave had now killed 6 people, 5 who entered it on a Tuesday morning on a liveaboard dive trip, and 1 soldier who went in to bring them home. After Mohammed Mahdi's death, the entire operation had to stop and reconvene. The calculus was no longer just about reaching the remaining 4. It was about not losing anyone else. Sending more divers into the same environment with the same equipment and the same approach had now twice proven fatal. Authorities contacted Dan Europe, the Divers Alert Network, a worldwide organization that supports dive emergencies and safety research. Dan reached out to specialist technical cave divers. Finnish divers train specifically for deep overhead environments, long dive times, complex gas planning, decompression management, the discipline to navigate in zero visibility without losing the line back to the exit. They arrived with closed-circuit rebreathers. A rebreather does not expel bubbles. It recycles the diver's exhaled breath, scrubbing carbon dioxide and re-injecting oxygen, allowing trained divers to stay underwater for dramatically longer at extreme depth without the gas consumption that limits conventional equipment. In a deep cave, where every extra minute burns through your margin, a rebreather is not a luxury. It is what makes the dive survivable at all. The Maldivian government, Italian officials, the dive operator, the university, the boat crew, and now an international team of specialists. All of it converged on a stretch of reef near Alimatha Island that, from a passing boat, would have looked completely unremarkable. The Finnish technical divers went in, past the first chamber, past the second, into the third segment, the deepest, the darkest, the part that every previous attempt had failed to reach safely. They found all four of them, together, Monica, Georgia, Muriel, Federico, in the same chamber, which means they had all reached the deepest part of the system. They were not found near the entrance, not found partway through. They were at the end, together in the dark, 60 meters below the surface of an ocean that, from above, still looked perfectly calm. What that means for the sequence of events, who had the first problem, whether anyone tried to turn back, whether the gas ran out before they found the exit or after, remains, as of this recording, officially undetermined. The dive computers, the tanks, the recovered equipment, the autopsy results. The investigation is ongoing, and no final cause of death has been released. 2 bodies were recovered on May 19th. The remaining 2 required a subsequent operation. Here is the detail that the investigation has not yet explained, and may never fully explain: the permits. A research permit existed for soft coral survey work. The university has stated that the fatal dive was not part of the official research activity. So who authorized a dive to 60 meters into a restricted cave system? Who knew the group was planning to go that deep? And if no one did, if this was a decision made in the water, or in the minutes before entry, how does that change what happened? The answers to those questions are not yet public, and they matter enormously. 5 divers went into Shark Cave. 6 people died in connection with that cave, and the investigation is now attempting to reconstruct a sequence of events from evidence that spent days underwater in a closed system before anyone could reach it. What the investigation will examine: the dive computers recovered from the victims, which logged depth, time, and gas consumption. The tanks, how much was left, and what mixture was being breathed. Any cameras recovered from the group. The autopsy findings, which may indicate whether decompression, oxygen toxicity, nitrogen narcosis, or simple gas depletion was the mechanism of death. And the dive plan itself, whether one existed, who signed off on it, and whether the planned dive matched the actual dive. Nitrogen narcosis deserves specific mention here, because it is one of the most insidious hazards of deep diving, and one of the hardest to account for from the outside. At depth, nitrogen acts on the brain in ways that produce effects similar to alcohol intoxication: impaired judgment, slowed response, a sense of false confidence and well-being. A diver affected by narcosis may feel completely fine, while making decisions that are objectively dangerous. They may not turn back when they should. They may not recognize that they are out of time. At 60 meters, narcosis is not a theoretical risk. It is a near certainty for anyone breathing air or nitrox. Technical divers manage it by using trimix, a gas blend that replaces some of the nitrogen with helium. Whether the 5 Italian divers were breathing trimix, what their planned gas supply was, and whether their equipment matched the dive they were actually doing. These are the questions that will determine whether this was a tragedy of circumstance or a systemic failure at multiple levels. The Maldives is one of the most regulated tourist destinations in the world when it comes to environmental protection. Its dive sites are monitored. Its operators are licensed. The 30-meter recreational limit exists specifically because the death physics below that depth require training and equipment that recreational divers do not receive. Shark Cave, whatever name you use for it, was known. Experienced local divers know it exists. Some had entered portions of it under appropriate technical diving conditions. The site was not a secret, which means the questions that remain go beyond this specific group, this specific boat, this specific morning. How is a site known to be this dangerous accessible to a group on a recreational liveaboard? What is the process by which a dive guide, with other people's lives in their hands, makes the call to enter a cave system at 60 meters? And when something goes wrong catastrophically, immediately, with no warning visible from the surface, what is the system's capacity to respond? Mohammed Mahdi's death is the answer to that last question. The system's capacity was not enough. It sent a trained military diver into an environment that required specialist technical cave diving equipment, and he did not come back. Georgia was 23. Her mother was a marine ecologist who had spent her career studying the ocean that killed her. Whatever brought them both into that cave on that morning? Love of the water, curiosity, professional instinct, the particular confidence that comes from knowing a subject deeply. It wasn't enough either. That's the part that doesn't resolve. Knowledge and passion and years of experience brought those 5 people to a place that had no margin left to give them. The investigation is ongoing. The remaining recovered bodies are with authorities. The dive computers and tanks are in the hands of investigators. The university has distanced itself from the fatal dive. The operator, the boat, and the dive plan are all under scrutiny. No final report has been released. When that report comes, and I will cover it here when it does, it will either confirm that this was a series of individual decisions that compounded into catastrophe, or it will reveal a failure somewhere in the system that was supposed to prevent exactly this. The Maldivian government has not yet announced whether Shark Cave will be formally closed, marked, or restricted beyond what already exists on paper. Here is the question I want you to sit with. The 30-meter recreational limit existed. The cave was known. A certified instructor led the group in. So was this a failure of individual judgment? 5 experienced people who overestimated their margin? Or was it a failure of the system that allowed a known death trap to remain accessible to a recreational liveaboard with no technical dive oversight? Think carefully before you answer, sir, because one of those conclusions lets the industry off the hook, and the other one doesn't.